back to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, Kyle and I share some interviews we did on site at the Horizons conference in New York City. It was really cool. We did maybe 5 or 7 minute spots with a bunch of folks outside the event so we could kind of unpack a little bit of what we ran into. Good news for all of you is that Horizons has started producing videos of their talks already. So it's been, less than a month, and a lot of those talks are available online, ready to download, I think on Vimeo or YouTube or something. So we'll link to that. And I definitely recommend checking the event out in the future. It was amazing. Neil Goldsmith did a great job emceeing the event, running the whole thing. It was really fantastic. You could tell how much effort he and Kevin Baltic put in. It's really just an amazing set of days there in New York City in early October. Friday night, the event opened with a party kind of soiree thing. It wasn't crazy. It was just people chilling out on little pillows, and there was an organ going, kind of traditional Indian music at some points, and folk music at others, cash bar. It was just really fantastic. It was a great time to just warm up to being in this highly engaged mental space for a few days, and it was great. And we also had a great time at the event itself where people were presenting. And then Saturday night, Kyle and I had a great time at the Symposia after party. We got to meet some other friends of the show, and got to actually meet Duncan. Hopefully we can get him on the show in the near future. So the idea of that event was microdosing, pros and cons, and kind of getting into the nitty gritty. What is it? How might it operate? And it was cool. We went in thinking there was going to be a really heated debate, but it was actually, quite moderate, and people were definitely listening to both sides, and kind of just, I think everybody learned a lot, and we laughed a lot too. Duncan is incredibly hilarious. Catherine McLean, Paul Austin, Hamilton Morris, and Sophia Korb were all amazing on the panel too. And Symposia does a great job with events. It was cool. It was like a living room almost, and then the audience was around it in a circle. So if you get the opportunity, definitely check out some Symposia events in person. They'll probably be coming to a city near you in the future. So I think that's it for an intro. Let us know what you think about this episode, because this is a little new for us. It's a bunch of voices. It's not a cohesive narrative for an hour. So if you like it, let us know. Maybe we can do more of these things, and maybe there's a lot of new ways we could run the show. We've been thinking about listener feedback, where we make it possible for you to record your voice on a website or submit to us some files. So that's something we're thinking about, and let us know if that's of interest. And a lot of you offered to help us. I reached out for help the other day. I really wanted to thank you all for being willing to help. We got well over 100 emails, and I'm a little daunted at how to even approach coordinating that many folks for help. So we're going to look at it and see if there's a way to make it reasonable for you guys to participate. And we'll definitely be in touch soon. I'm working really hard on a plan. I'm getting closer. It's just a little new, but it's coming. So thank you all for being willing to help, and really appreciate it. That's it for this intro section, a little bit of business, and then we can get to the show. Kyle and I decided to run another book giveaway contest. We're giving away a ton of stuff here, and all you have to do is give us your email. You can sign up over at psychedelicstoday.com. It's called the Ultimate Psychedelic Book Giveaway. Probably close to $350 worth of stuff. So let me read off the list of stuff you can get here. Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss, Dennis McKenna. LSD, My Problem Child, Reflections on Sacred Drugs, Mysticism, and Science by Albert Hoffman. The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide by Fadiman. P-Call, A Chemical Love Story by the Shulgins. Dirty Pictures about Sasha Shulgin. LSD, Doorway to the Numinous by Groff. Adventures of Self-Discovery by Groff. Healing Our Deepest Wounds. The Ultimate Journey, When the Impossible Happens, and Holotropic Breathwork, all by Groff. And that last one was co-written with his late wife, Christina. And you get a seat in our class, Navigating Psychedelics, lessons on self-care and integration. More on that soon. You also get a Psychedelics Today t-shirt and mug. Yeah, we're roughly guessing this is about $350 worth of stuff. If you want to sign up, check us out, psychedelicstoday.com, and you'll see the link for a giveaway. You'll see my face with holding some books. You just click that and you get there. The more you share, the more you increase your odds of winning. Some folks have shared it all over Reddit, YouTube, various forums they're in, and it really has increased their odds of winning. So you just, we'll email you a link after you sign up. You share that. The more people that sign up through your link, the more chances you get to win. The contest ends January 1, so make sure to get your entries into the contest before then. Best of luck. If you want to look really cool in some Psychedelics Today gear, you really want to check out psychedelicstodayshop.com. We've got all sorts of cool stuff, from t-shirts to mugs to shower curtains and pillows. So you check it out. Any small purchase helps, even if it's just some stickers. We got some cool stickers there. Check it out, psychedelicstodayshop.com. Tell your friends, maybe buy some presents for this upcoming, what do you guys call it, Black Friday? Yeah, Black Friday. Maybe that. Or maybe it's a Christmas present or whatever. We would love you guys to check out some of our stuff there and support the show. Thanks. Again, here on the scene, Cooper Union Building with Heidi. Heidi, thanks for talking to us.
Oh, anytime.
So, we are asking folks about what are some big lessons they learned at Horizons, or like one or two big lessons they've learned.
I think for me, it's an ongoing lesson about how this conversation is growing and how many facets there are to it. And I feel like we heard from a variety of like different areas this weekend, but I don't know if I have a big takeaway. I'm really tired right now. But it always feels great to be in this community of people that introduce new ideas and new thoughts about moving forward, not just in the world of psychedelics, but just in the world as it is today. So I think that everybody brings like something a little bit different, and it forms a puzzle that's really fun to be a part of.
Yeah, that is true. It's kind of nice to see that people are kind of holistically aware, and aware that not everybody can work on every issue, and that it is a community effort. And that's pretty cool. And you asked a question about children earlier in one of the sessions. Do you feel like you have a way to get that answered? Like how to engage with children more around the issue of psychedelics?
I feel like it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
I have a 13-year-old. Not that she's a guinea pig, but I think a lot about, rite of passage and the fact that we just don't really have a good rite of passage for adolescents coming into the world in this country, in our culture. I don't know. I think it's just going to be an ongoing process of discovery. And, as she gets older, I think I'll learn, and then maybe I'll be able to share with other people from my own experiences. But there's sort of a dearth in that area. I think it's culturally understandable.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is tricky. There's so many legal issues, cultural baggage around it.
Ethical.
And ethical too. And, even say, for instance, if we did holotropic breath work with kids, like that's still not all that accessible because it's a big event. And it's really hard for people in America to even take a day off to do that kind of thing.
Right.
I think in Europe, 5-6 weeks of vacation a year legally, which is a huge leg up over from what we have here for the availability of doing that kind of thing. So, definitely some problems.
I think there are going to be more family type things that will start to come up, and it will become more like a conversation. My concern is that what do the kids do? Like, they come back, they have this experience. Who do they talk to?
Right.
Except, like, how do they feel around their kids? I mean, their friends, their peers.
Like, hopefully it's almost like a community thing, but that's not necessarily possible.
Not right. I don't know about right now. No.
And can you describe why that conversation came up? So what lecture were you in at the time?
Oh, I was listening to what's her name? The Weechel.
I'll pull it up while we talk.
Yeah, Stacy. I can't remember her last name. She was talking about how in the Weechel community, the kids are incorporated from prenatally on. And, I was just wondering if she had any resources to share about, how we can bring some of that in.
Right. It sounds like she's just trying to start the conversation. It's Stacy Schaefer from University of California at Chico.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it was interesting because, even in utero, they're getting exposed and having kind of, it's obvious that the mescaline's making it to the brain of the unborn child. So it is having an effect, and it's almost like they're having this relationship from a very early age with it, and it's fascinating. And I think as an anthropologist, she's kind of like, they fill in the backstory and let people run with the data. So I feel like Jonathan Thompson did some good stuff. I haven't necessarily spent enough time with his material yet, psychedelic parenting, but he did a fair amount of work on the subject for sure. I think a lot around like how do we be ethical parents and be maybe participants in the psychedelic community too.
It's a challenge. I think it's definitely a challenge. I mean, I'm noticing it even with my own daughter. When, we talk about things, I see how the cultural influences around things that I'm not necessarily too keen on her going in that direction, but like I see how it's already there. Like, when you go to college, you drink with your friends. Like, that's just like a given. So I think it's changing the conversation.
Yeah. The media gave us that.
Thank you, media. Yeah, and it's still going on. So the conversation needs to be more expansive.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
We're here with Erica. Erica, you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So let's maybe pass that. We'll get you on the show later. But what have you been thinking about this event so far, Horizons?
This is only my second psychedelics conference, and but I went to the MAPS conference in April, and the scale of that was like insane and beautiful and just an incredible experience. But this is a really small, intimate, everything being on one track and everybody getting a pretty similar content experience is a really good platform for communication. It's just been really awesome seeing the same people that I saw, a lot of the same people from there, a lot of the same people from Burning Man. It's cool to encounter people continuing to come to these events over and over and over, and I look forward to it again next year.
So you do a lot of communication stuff. Did you learn anything about how to approach that?
I learned about I think one of my favorite things I learned is how much. So Shannon Claire did her talk on the psychedelic training, psychedelic therapist training, and I was really encouraged and I felt it in my heart how much work is going into making sure that everybody who goes into this field is truly prepared for what they're doing, and the way that we communicate that to each other. I think that just the work that goes into helping people become psychedelic therapists is a context for how seriously people take this, and I thought that was really beautiful. And on the communication aspect, I think there was a lot of conversation here about making these subjects more accessible to populations that are, have historically been overlooked and even particularly victimized by the war on drugs, and creating a conversation that they are feel invited to, and I think that's something that we all have a responsibility to work on.
Absolutely. There's so much responsibility we have by being at this particular juncture in history, which feels perilous at times.
It does. But it also feels imminent and what is the word? You can't stop it. This is already hit its critical point, and it's it's not downhill, but it is kind of we've hit a point where it's the narrative is on our side a lot more than it was when I first got involved with this 4 years ago. That was when the bubble really started to burst on the psychedelic research, and MDMA for PTSD started being headlines, and now not a day goes by that you don't see a headline about something like this, and it's really positive. There's generally not a lot of hate articles about it, at least not that I see,
Never.
It's either they ignore it or they talk positively,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And was there any like person that you really resonated with, like who was presenting at the event so far?
I really, really enjoyed Nisha's talk. It's the first time I've heard her speak, and
I've been waiting to hear her speak for years.
I have to say that I really love the comment about when she was talking about Anne Shulgin's experience with mescaline and how that felt very familiar to her, and how they're psychedelic people, and like this analogy of like Harry Potter getting a letter from Hogwarts and like this invitation into this place that like something inside you knew it existed, but you hadn't been able to access it before, and then you find there's like this whole community of people who feel the same way, and you're all working to make this like a more consensus reality, like it doesn't all have to be about war and destroying the planet. We can help people heal their own issues so that we can heal as a culture and possibly not kill ourselves.
Have you been thinking at all of any kind of pitfalls in the movement, any kind of like obvious errors that we should try to work towards correcting?
I think as this becomes more mainstream, like the idea of the privilege that comes with being able to safely access psychedelics, like that's something that comes up a lot, and it should, and it's like we need to have those we need to be able to, obviously we can't say that we're working on it, and we need to be able to make sure like we're there to invite those communities and invite those conversations and not like shy away from them like a lot of other subject areas try to. We can't pretend like it's not real, and ignoring it is insulting to those who experience it. So talking at Shannon's talk about the psychedelic therapy research, like talking about how they're like specifically recruiting psychologists who would have experience in that realm, and the marginalized and minority communities would feel safe talking to, and that's really important because like I know that they've had a hard time even recruiting people of color and people of not in like that fall into the mainstream demographics to even participate in the studies, and that's something to be said about like the bias. Like, is there something that we're not catching because we're not accessing those demographics? But as psychedelic research progresses, and particularly I think in 2019 is when like the expanded access will begin. So more psychedelic therapy will be available, even as MDMA is still in phase 3 trials, because the FDA like accepts that this is a therapy that will eventually become legal, and it is safe, that it's immoral to not let people access it before it's fully legal. So that should be really interesting and a really powerful way to like as we're changing all these drug laws and everything, like kind of trying to help heal some of the harm that has come from the war on drugs and come from like all of it in general.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts?
I really invite anybody who thinks that they even maybe want to be involved in psychedelics to just come to a conference, volunteer, like whatever. Volunteering is a particularly fulfilling experience, like even if you don't necessarily get to see all the content, like, you're meeting a lot of people, and, it's a really awesome way to become involved. And, if you feel a calling to it, definitely come, like what's it going to hurt?
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, Erica.
All right, we're on the street here with Bryce from
Hello.
MAPS. So we want to hear your thoughts about Horizons so far. How's it been?
Horizons is one of the best psychedelic events I've ever been to, and I'm so thankful that it's an annual gathering in New York, and that the New York community is able to cultivate their appreciation for psychedelics in a safe environment and a professional, high-quality program. And I think that New York is really expanding what psychedelic events can be through Horizons and the work that they're doing on a regular basis, and I'm really impressed overall.
Nice. Why do you think it's one of the best, like compared to, say, Sci-Science?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of Horizons versus Psychedelic Science is that it's an annual gathering. Psychedelic Science is an event that takes MAPS, 2 years to produce, largely because it's not just, one stage with one person speaking at a time. It's 4 concurrent stages, workshops, other events. So it's great to have like the big blowout like psychedelic science, though I do find a lot of value in the annual gathering, the regular space to learn and talk about these things. And I think that having only one speaker at a time is really nice. It gives everyone like a hyper focus and makes them more present in the event. It's more of a curated experience. So I think that Horizons does really well in keeping people focused, and yeah.
It's very intimate, you know, a lot of, I feel like, outside conversations happening.
Totally, yeah. I mean, the fact that I was able to meet you guys at Psychedelics today just because I saw a shirt, and then now we're hanging out, we're friends, it's great. I really appreciate just going up to new people and being like, hi, what brought you here? And, you know, you hear a lot of different responses when people say they came from very far away. I met someone that came from Ireland for this. And
wow.
It blows my mind, and I'm so thankful that, again, this is such a high-quality event that people will travel far and wide to be here with the community.
Yeah. So how long have you been involved in this psychedelic community doing this work, and like how have you seen the evolution of this maybe into the mainstream, and how are these events impacting that?
Sure, yeah. I've been in the kind of psychedelic science field since June 2011. I started at MAPS as a social media intern after having a very potent LSD experience at Coachella Music Festival. And after that experience, I kind of started to do a little bit more intense research on the science of psychedelics. Prior to that, I read a lot on Arrowhead about experience reports, saying like how other people would phrase their experiences and contextualize it for other people to understand. But I never really focused as much on the science. Like, I was not familiar with MAPS at the time, and when I had my experience with LSD, I came back and started asking a lot of people, you know, if they knew of any entity or company or research institution that was studying psychedelics, and someone pointed me to maps.org, and I'm very thankful that at the time they had an internship position open. I lived in San Jose, California, and Santa Cruz was just 45 minutes, so I'm very blessed and fortunate and privileged to have been geographically near, MAPS.
Yeah.
And since then, I've helped cultivate our social media presence, our website, our emails, and multimedia crowdfunding projects. And very thankful to be involved. I've just hit 6 years with MAPS, and now I'm Associate Director of Communications and Marketing.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Awesome work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
So what's one takeaway from this weekend so far? Has there been a lecture that really stood out for you, or just something that you learned that maybe you didn't know before?
Yeah, I think one of the things I've kind of known, but I'm learning again and being reminded of, is the diversity of this work. At MAPS, we have a large number of studies that we have concurrently going on, though our big focus is MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. I learned a lot about peyote today, which is really great, and especially how the use of peyote in certain cultures can possibly inspire our culture to integrate psychedelics in various ways and add more meaning to the experiences and use them with maybe more respect and more of a regular, consistent container. I learned a lot about the use of psychedelics and language in terms of creativity from Nishay Devanant, and it was really cool to hear, some actual direct reports of the use of psychedelics for creativity in the past, and hearing a writer's account of what it was like is really inspiring, because someone that already has proficiency with word crafting, now in this metaphorical space, they're able to approach things differently, and also after the fact they're able to integrate the way that they were approaching things differently and continue forward with their newfound appreciation of alternative words to describe regular behavior.
Yeah, Nishay's doing some really cool work, and being able to play with language, I think, is huge, because it helps us get that out there and developing new ways to describe these experiences and talk about them. I think it's definitely like an evolution of like, how do we keep...
Totally. I completely agree, and I think it's really important to focus on language, especially in this day of psychedelic research, because in the past, people were very sensationalist with their language, and it kind of was a disservice to the overall scientific field. And now, knowing what happened in the past, we're able to approach things at MAPS more cautiously, kind of keep things unbiased and don't exaggerate things, very, very intentional with words, like MDMA-assisted psychotherapy could help someone overcome PTSD. It doesn't always help someone overcome PTSD. We use kind of vague and yet specific phrases like may very often. Like, we can't say this is definitive every time. It's not a panacea for everything, but it may, it can, it could. It does not definitively though, and that's something I've focused a lot on in my work in communications, and I'm very thankful to have been so cautious. And I don't think anything we post on social media would take psychedelic science down, but I would, prefer to not create any variables that would allow that.
Yeah, awesome. And then what was that one comment when we first met? You just tweeted about it, so let's just...
Oh yeah, sure. It was really great to meet you guys. I'm so thankful that Joe was wearing a Psychedelics Today shirt, because otherwise I probably would never have recognized you guys. Yeah. And I was really glad to pull Rick Doblin, founder and executive director of MAPS, into the conversation, just because I know he's a notable character, and I wasn't sure if you guys had met him. And I really appreciated Rick's just general openness to chatting. And when I was highlighting what Psychedelics Today was, at least from my basic understanding, his humorous response was, "Oh, well, we're working on psychedelics tomorrow," and I just thought that it was kind of like a nice little one-up. But also, you guys are today, and that's tomorrow, so you guys have the present advantage.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm sure it would be awesome to get you on a full-length podcast. So we'll definitely invite you on to chat more. But any last takeaways from this Horizon weekend?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that helped host the event, everyone who came to the event, everyone who shared research at the event or will be here in the future to share their research. And thank you to you guys for not just being here and learning yourself, but also making it less of an echo chamber by doing these interviews and helping scale a lot of the connection and learning that's happening here. So thank you guys for adding more value to the conference by doing this.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Kevin. So one thing you might have learned that was awesome.
Yeah, Shannon Carlin's presentation from MAPS. She's the coordinator of the therapist training program, was really inspiring, getting to map out kind of the future of training the next round of therapists from phase 3 to beyond phase 3.
That was really neat and kind of optimistic. Sounds like it might really scale well, especially with that expanded access.
Yeah, I think I've been following the MDMA for PTSD research for quite a while, and I was pretty shocked actually that the FDA gave it that breakthrough designation. And that, I've been optimistic about it for a long time, but that really kind of solidified my optimism that this is a thing that's actually going to happen, which is pretty amazing.
That's cool. Do you think that will blow over at all into any of the other psychedelic research and approvals?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be kind of a watershed moment in the movement overall, and I think psilocybin and the work that Hefter is doing is not far behind. I would really like to see an emphasis on non-medicalized policies now that MAPS will kind of have resources freed up to focus initiatives into harm reduction, potential decriminalization of personal possession of drugs like MDMA and psilocybin, and kind of move into that direction, similarly to how the cannabis kind of arc has been with medical to now legalization for personal use.
Yeah, that's a great point. Did you learn anything in particular about, you're up on the Iboga-Ibogaine world pretty well, but did you learn anything on that this time around?
Yeah, Tom's presentation was really great.
Yeah.
I know Tom Kingsley Brown has been working for MAPS on that study for a long time. I think it was interesting that he included these lesser known legislative movements in states like Vermont and even New York that has a bill that's not really moving anywhere, but it's just kind of weird how there is actual legislation being proposed that's talking about facilitating funding into Ibogaine, and I hadn't heard all that much about it, so it was really great that that Tom was able to include that in his presentation to this audience and hopefully inspire some activists.
Yeah, it's not really that hard to start any kind of movement like that, even in a small state like, maybe Rhode Island could get on board. It's a tiny-ass place.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. With people, talking to their congressmen and women and state officials, and this opioid kind of attention on the crisis with overdose rates and addiction rates is kind of ripe to bring that public attention into these alternative treatments as far as the mainstream is concerned. We, of course, in the movement know a lot about it, but even if the legislation doesn't necessarily move towards passing, it could still be a good excuse to start a conversation with people who are not familiar with this type of work at all.
All right, cool. Kevin, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Here we are in Cooper Square, New York City at the Cooper Union Building. And I'm here joined by Lindsay. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we want to kind of chat with you about your Horizons experience. This is your third Horizons.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And any big takeaways?
I think one thing that was unique for this year, it's always wonderful to see all of the presentations with the different psychedelics and the different therapy modalities that are going with them and the different results. But I thought Dr. Elizabeth Nielsen's talk about starting new research into therapist use, and is it important or not if a psychedelic therapist is hallucinogen naive or not. So does it matter? These are very big questions, and everybody's got a lot of opinions, and opinions don't really mean a lot without the science behind it. So I think it's a great place to kick off for future paths of research.
Right. There's a huge future ahead of us for research. It's like this thing that was illegal forever shouldn't have been. All these other fields got to develop, and now psychedelics gets the opportunity to catch up in a lot of ways. And it's a time full of opportunities, maybe a little disappointment here and there. But so can you talk about your work at all, and like how it might relate to like perspectives on what you could bring in the future?
Well, if I'm on one of the psilocybin research teams, and may have the opportunity to start engaging in some, psi training and therapy myself. And so that's sort of, if I might become part of that role, what does that mean for me and psychedelics? And I think it's great.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And are you seeing, or in this movement, are you seeing anything that might be like a obvious flaw, or like something, like any obvious issues?
I mean, there's sort of the main one that we've seen, I think, forever is sort of the idea of the panacea effect, like it's a cure-all. But I think the research indicates that there's really good stuff there, even if it's not a panacea. Just all the different indications that are being helped. I don't know.
So maybe it's not great for like post-surgical recovery.
Right.
But maybe it's great to have some acid instead of a 30-rack of beer.
There you go. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Or to throw spaghetti on each other as like a acid test situation unfolded in the past. So cool. Well, thank you for your words.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks.
All right, welcome to Psychedelics Today. We're here at the Horizons Conference, New York City. Here with Joe.
Nathaniel,
awesome. So we just want to hear what your thoughts are about the weekend. What is one thing that you've learned from this weekend?
One thing.
Doesn't have to be great.
Yeah, one thing so far. Well, I thought the last talk, Najay's talk about Timothy Leary, was a new concept in terms of his turn on, tune in, drop out mantra that he always was saying, in terms of looking really at that from a different perspective. And I thought that was interesting in the fact that she spoke about the words behind that and kind of looking at how to describe the experiences that you have with psychedelics within that construct.
Can you dig a little bit more into what she meant by that? Did you understand it?
Yeah. In terms of what she meant was really, tuning in is understanding that there's an alternate reality to what we experience. And turning on is really like going into that space and kind of the dropout piece is saying, okay, like, there's these alternate realities. You know, how do you make that part of your reality? You know, and it can be, you know, it's very subjective in terms of the person's experience and what it could be. So it's a lot of kind of, as you see a lot of people going into these experiences and having these entheogenic experiences, it's individual, but it all seems to have the same kind of flavor in terms of what people get out of the experiences, depending on how deep you go with the medicine or the sacraments that you're using. You know,
it was really interesting because I think normally when people hear that, they think about like dropping out of society and dropping out of like the mainstream. I think that's like the cultural kind of narrative that when you hear that, but it seemed like it was almost like kind of dropping out of your own narrative and kind of redefining it. That's, I guess, the way I took it when she described it. It was like kind of like an opportunity to tune into yourself and like kind of drop out of whatever you kind of created to.
Right. Well, redefining yourself. I mean, if you look at, I've kind of taken this perspective. You look at the cycle of life and every day, like every day's a new chance to redefine yourself inside your own head. And I think kind of Leary was trying to border on that, but it got pulled in from a historical perspective in terms of like he was seen as like the messiah and the guru and everyone who had his answers because he came from Harvard and he was an intelligent guy, and you know that kind of took off. So it has this more cultural flavor to it when people say it as a sign of the times, but in terms of the actual, if you look at it from an individual level versus a cultural construct of like this is a sign of the times and this is what you have to drop out of society. He was saying that in that way, but in terms of didn't have to drop out of society. You have to drop out of what society says about yourself or what you say about yourself. You know, it's very introspective in those respects. So it was definitely a new flavor and a new take on that statement that you don't necessarily hear all the time because a lot of people have, you know, the big cultural reflection of this is the 60s and this is what he was doing and it went on, and you know, and it still goes on in our circles about, well, let's blame Leary for all of this, and really he was just kind of saying what he noticed about the situation, and people took it in that context, and that's kind of
what
still
was
Nashay's
like last remarks, like friends don't let friends jump on the Tim Leary hating bandwagon or something along those lines.
Yeah, but it's the reality of the situation is that, you know, if he didn't rise to that occasion and rise to such a, you know, a cultural icon within the 60s, you know, that's where we were, and that's, you know, where it was, and it had a lot to do, you know, with the Vietnam War and that person, you know, that part of the 60s, and Nixon was like, oh shit, like he's telling people to disengage with our reality of what society should be doing and what is, and the war, and so it was propelled by that.
Trickster medicine.
Yeah.
So you've been to Horizons a few times. How does this one compare to the previous years?
Well, last time I went was the reunion year, so they tried to pair it up, which I thought was good. They've kind of gone to this clinical Saturday. Sunday is more like plant medicine, you know, hodgepodgey, different interdisciplinary, which I find is a great thing. I mean, I noticed attendance has been a little bit lower, it seems, than past years, but there's so much going on in terms of saturation within the culture, within the psychedelic movement, however you want to call it. I think there's almost an oversaturation of events, where this one, I think, is, you know, it's a really well put together event, but it's always hard to tell why people don't show up and that part of things.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Well, any last remarks?
No, not at the moment.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much. Yeah. All right, we're here with the psychodologist.
Yeah.
We had her on the show. You might remember her talking about ecofeminism.
Hey, everybody.
So, what is one takeaway or one thing that you've learned from Horizons 2017 so far?
Right now I'm learning that Psychedelics Today wants me to just riff it straight up, because I'm like, well, I haven't been to too many talks. That's okay. We're recording.
That's cool.
So we just take a deep breath here. No, I know that so far my experience has been so rich by the conversations I've had behind the scenes, and I love how I volunteered both mornings, missed all the talks, and yet I don't feel that I missed out, because conversations I had with others spoke to the themes and content that was present, and even the controversies that came up. So I appreciate the diverse range of speakers and content at this conference. I think Saturday was a bit more hard science, masculine approach to psychedelics, and a bit more of an industry appeal for the audience. And then today we just had the talk by Nishay, the humanities and psychedelic prose and poetry. And I think we heard about peyote this morning, and then this afternoon conversations about race and about two different talks about using sacred and indigenous medicines for science. So I think good on Horizons for doing that. The takeaway I'm getting is that this movement is it's a very special time to participate in this movement, and I feel that without sounding grandiose, we're making history, that this will be written.
Yeah. So I know you were volunteering a lot, and maybe you didn't get to jump in on a bunch of lectures, but we recently had somebody reach out and said, like, how do I approach this conference? Like, I want to go, I want to learn as much, like, how do I really navigate this? And I think you brought up a good point, like, a lot of the learning also happens outside the lectures. You have any advice or any comments on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share it. I have not paid for one music festival that I've ever been to. Just FYI, I paid for Burning Man, but everything else I've volunteered for. Haven't paid for a conference. I went to Psychedelic Science, but I didn't attend the conference. I was in the free marketplace. So there are ways for this to be accessible to you no matter what you're working with, including if you have transportation issues, you can watch the live streams or the recorded videos. But in terms of getting involved, you look on the website for a volunteer place, or you email the info and you say, I'd like to volunteer. When you do that, you get to be a part of what's being created. You get to work behind the scenes and put your effort into the entire thing. And I think even though we're flooded with a lot of social media, following the organizations that you care about and unfollowing the ones that are clogging up your newsfeed and making you not want to look, and then you'll see, oh, there's this event coming up and that, and yeah, that's my greatest recommendation. And look for a psychedelic society in your area and see what events they're having, because these big conferences are great, but it's like the community stuff that's smaller, more, round table, that can be rich as well.
Yeah, you've been to a bunch of conferences and different events. How have you seen this movement evolve? Like, how is Horizons 2017 evolving over time? Because you've been here a few times, correct?
Yeah, this is my third year.
Cool. Or where do you see this going? I mean, obviously a lot of people are talking about legalization of MDMA in 2021, but I don't know, like, how have you seen the evolution over time?
That's a great question. I think that it's too soon to say what evolution is happening, because I've had such an evolution in my own perspective, and I'm more focused on that. I came into this looking at from a vulgar materialism perspective. Do you know that term, vulgar materialism?
I haven't heard of that.
I learned that at the Transpersonal Conference.
Yeah.
It's when you reduce things down to the pure molecular biological approach. And I know that that's how I came at it the first year, because that's what made me comfortable. That's what I was trained in school, clinical psychology. And now I see I have a more holistic, more transpersonal lens. That means across the personal and even beyond. So we're talking about interdisciplinary. I say it's transdisciplinary. We're going beyond any sort of science that humans can create to understand these phenomena.
Love it. That's awesome.
I love you. Thank you, Psychedelics Today.
We love you too. Any last words for the folks listening?
No, that's it. That's it. All the listeners of Psychedelics Today, and you guys have a pretty good, how are you doing? How are your ratings?
Pretty good, I think.
Mostly 1-star reviews.
Oh,
no.
1 out of 1. Well, listen, folks, these guys do it out of the kindness of their heart, and they're caring for this movement. Pigeons, it's much bigger than all of us, and we know that, and that doesn't mean that we have unlimited resources to put in. So if you can support Psychedelics Today or any other grassroots organization or MAPS, symposia, please do that, and even just support them by telling your friends. That's all.
And also check out your podcast.
The Psychedologist.
Yeah.
Consciousness Positive Radio.
Where can they find you?
thepsychedologist.com or facebook.com/thepsychedologist. That's like psychedelic psychologist.
Awesome.
Thanks
so much.
Here we are today, Cooper Square, outside Cooper Union Building, with Peter. Peter's an attendee at the conference, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Just curious about what maybe one takeaway you have from the conference is that you've, might start thinking about for a few more days?
Yeah, I think for me, just the idea that there is a lot of people around that are part of the community, part of the tribe, and that I don't have to feel like I'm isolated or like I can't talk about this with people. So,
absolutely, yeah, it is a huge movement, and you wouldn't really expect it, but it is definitely also a subcurrent.
Yeah, I'm glad that a lot of people are coming out of the closet, like public figures and whoever, but it's inspiring for sure.
Do you have any actions that might come out of this?
I think, since I might get involved with some of the research in my school because I've seen some of the presenters that are here, which I didn't even previously know about. So that sort of spurred me a little bit.
That's fantastic.
I don't know if they can even hear that. But so this is your first conference?
Yeah, first one.
What's it like to come and interact, and like, did you feel overwhelmed of like needing to maybe join in a bunch of lectures? How'd you navigate this space as a first conference?
I think I was a little nervous, coming alone, but I think most of the people here are open-minded. And, I had some self-consciousness. I'm like, I'm this like straight-edge white guy, like conservative guy, But I think most of the people I talk to are like really accepting. They're like, that's awesome. Like, you're different, which I didn't maybe expect, but it's been really good.
Yeah. What's it like to be part of like a psychedelic conference? Is that like anxiety of being in that taboo culture? Is it kind of like, I'm kind of coming out of the closet? Or does it feel good? Like, wow, I've found other people that I can have conversations with.
Yeah, it feels great to be around people that like speak your language, where you don't need to feel like you're straining to describe something. But yeah, it's, for the most part, it's good, and it's just a relief to feel accepted by everyone and not, Yeah.
And what was one of your favorite lectures?
I think by far my favorite was the one on the psilocybin for alcohol abuse, because I think they focused on the case studies, and like those direct quotes, I get a lot out of those.
Yeah.
When they describe like in 5 lines what it did, if it was a lifelong drinker or that, I get way more out of that than any of like research graphs and findings.
Do you remember like a quote off the top of your head, even if you're paraphrasing it?
I remember one from some of the videos, and it was like some lady was talking about how the mushrooms they were terrifying at first, and then it kind of opened her up to something that was like the most precious thing she had ever known. And I think one of the other lines she said was like, the lessons take root in your heart, which I definitely resonated a lot with, And you're a grad student, correct? Yeah, I am.
How do you think you're going to incorporate some of this into your studies, or do you think you can? Do you think it's
I've been trying to find a way to work it into even some of my counseling classes. It's not easy, but I think if I'm the one to take the first little step, people might be more open. And also get involved in the research for psychedelic assisted therapy that I might want to go towards. So
awesome. Any last remarks or anything? Any big takeaways from the weekend?
Yeah, I would just say I think it's telling me that it's okay to follow like what my passions are and what's in my heart, which is big. And people in the world sometimes just don't support that, and they don't, so that's why it's great to be here.
Follow your passions, even if it's taboo.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much. Kyle and I decided to raise some funds using Patreon, which is a really cool way to support the show, because you can choose to donate a small portion of money monthly for certain prizes. We are allowing you guys access to interviews before they will ever hit the web. So, for instance, this Horizons episode, they've had that for a few days, and I believe there's some panel discussion stuff we've recorded and made that available there. You will probably also have access to some member or patron-only webinars. We also have rewards including t-shirts, stickers, mugs, access to our Navigating Psychedelics class, and much more. So check it out, patreon.com/psychedelics today, or you can get a link from our site, psychedelicstoday.com. If you are interested in doing legal psilocybin mushroom work in Jamaica with an expert, you really want to go check out Eric Osborne. You can find him at mycomeditations.com. Coming up in late November, I think right after Thanksgiving, you can go down to Jamaica, work with him, and do some serious inner work on yourself. Mushrooms do allow really great access to your inner landscape, and doing it on the beach in a beautiful environment in Jamaica is a great spot to do it. I really do recommend Eric Osborne, and you should check out a couple of our past episodes with him if you want to get a feel for him personally. I really do appreciate what he's doing and can't wait to get down there. Coming up, this November retreat will feature Catherine McLean, PhD, and Shane Moss, the comedian. There's also another comedian, don't know the name, but you should check that one out on their site because that could be really special. Catherine's going to bring a lot of information about psychedelic safety and integration practices. Shane is going to talk at length about his healing process and explorations through psychedelics. The last podcast we did with Shane, Eric helped us there. It was really fun because Shane got into a lot of the funny, great parts of psychedelics and also some of the scary parts. Having people that have that knowledge available to help guide you through this stuff is great. And Eric's been through, has been doing this for an incredible amount of time. So he's a pro. What's the thing? 20,000 hours. Yeah, whatever that rule is of you put in so many hours of practice to get to this expert level. He's at about, master level. So, you're probably going to want to check him out. If you don't want to go do ayahuasca in Peru your first time, maybe you want a shorter flight from the US or Europe and you don't really see the need to go upriver in a little boat, like maybe this is for you. Yeah, again, mycomeditations.com, and you can learn a lot more there, mycomeditations.com. If you have any questions about it, feel free to email us, psychedelicstoday, email@gmail.com. Hope you check it out.